Objective 8c, proving congruent triangles. This time we're going to talk about SSS. I will be able to prove two triangles are congruent using side, side, side. And here's our postulate. If two triangles have all three sides congruent to each other, then they are congruent triangles. So two congruent triangles look like this. We have three sides that are congruent, and you can kind of see that these two look similar. Let me try and turn the second one or rotate it so that they look the same or have the same orientation. There you go, and now those two triangles have the same orientation, and you can see that they are congruent. Now remember that if they are congruent, not only are the sides congruent, but the corresponding angles must be congruent also. So I could add in these angle markings, saying that all of those corresponding parts are congruent, and all that I need to know is those three pieces of information in black that we talked about: side, side, side. Okay? Alright, so our first example. Assume that rectangle ABCD is divided in half by a diagonal. Prove that the two triangles are congruent. So the first thing that I would do for this one, definitely, is make a rectangle. So we'll start with a rectangle. I guess I will do, oh, that's not a very good color. Let's try, how about something in blue? I guess that's more of a purple, but that's fine. So we made a rectangle, and I'm going to divide that rectangle in half along its diagonal, and I'm going to go ahead and throw some labels on the corners. So A, B, C, D. And if you drew your diagonal the other way, it'll change what your proof will say. However, it doesn't change anything else. So now what we're going to start to do is we're going to start to think about what do we know. Alright? Alright, so the first thing that I know that segment AD has to be congruent to segment BC. And I know this because opposite sides in a rectangle have the same length. Opposite sides of a rectangle have the same length. So that's the first thing that I know, and I'm going to go ahead and mark that on my diagram. AD and BC are congruent. And now I'm going to see what else I know. And using the same basic principle, I know that segment DC is congruent to segment AB because opposite sides of a rectangle have the same length. see if I can cheat and copy and paste. Nope, I can't. Okay. Now don't forget, once you know that, you want to mark it on your diagram. So now I have two sides in each triangle that are congruent. I could, like from side angle side, I could try to see if the angles between those are congruent. And in fact, with this example, a rectangle, I know that they are, because all the corners of a rectangle are 90 degrees. However, since we're working on side angle, or side in this video, I'm going to try and show you that the diagonal, to figure out the third side of the triangle, I'm going to use that diagonal. So, I know that segment DB is congruent to segment DB because it is the same side. So DB is the same as DB because it is itself. If you look in the book, they'll call this the reflexive property. See if I can reflexive. I did it again. But to me, I always thought that just knowing that it is the same side or the same line segment was reason enough. I didn't know that vocabulary. So now I can see that DB is the same as DB. Okay, here comes the tricky part. I'm going to try and redraw these two triangles so that they're sitting next to each other and that I can see their corresponding parts in the same position. So I'll start here, and first I'll make my two triangles. It looks something like that and something like that. And my short side was the red one, so like that. And then I'll go ahead and put my markings, my green markings in, and those look like that. And last, the diagonal one looks like that. And now I'll throw in some labels. So some labels, I have to make sure that, okay, in my first triangle, AD is the red side, and the third angle is angle B. So we'll go ahead and put that up there by B. And in my second triangle, it looks like CB is the red side, and then the angle up at the top of CB, if you kind of follow this triangle, is part D. Okay, so when I name these two congruent triangles, I want to name them in the correct order so that I make sure their corresponding angles are corresponding. So I'm going to say triangle ADB is congruent. I started in the bottom left corner and worked my way around counterclockwise. is congruent to triangle CBD. Because all three sides are congruent. Or, in other words, side, side, side. And that's our first proof of triangle congruence by side, side, side.